Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome two very tall corporate leaders from India and USA, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Hrishi Bhattacharya. Gopal and Hrishi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Bhattacharya are co-authors of a book titled Embrace the Future. All of you have seen my interviews with both of them individually, and today I'm privileged to welcome both of them. By way of introduction, Mr. Gopalakrishnan is the former vice chairman of Hindustan Unilever Limited. He's the director of Tata Sons. He's the chairman of Castrol India, and is the director of the Press Trust of India. Mr. Hrishikesh Bhattacharya, who lives in Chicago, is the former senior vice president of Unilever. So my first question to both of you is, what inspired you to co-author Embrace the Future? And did your experiences of working together at Unilever influence the insights in this book?
Rishi, you be opening strike.
Okay. Well, yes, and Gopal and I have been colleagues and friends for over 50 years. And we have worked together many of those years in Unilever. So obviously, Unilever has had an influence on us. Fortunately, both of us also moved away at some point. And between Tata's and what I was doing and my consulting work and so on, is today a khichdi of experience rather than just one thing. But the genesis of the book came from, anyway, a sort of a chance conversation that we keep in touch with each other over the years. And in one of the conversations, Gopal was asking me what I am doing, and I was saying in my work, I was working on a lot of transformation-related business strategy work. And he said he was also doing transformation work, but on the people side. And we sort of started arguing a bit about what is more important. And then we said, let's not be silly. Both are equally important. But it is probably missed that the mind side, the strategy formulation side, which is an application of the mind, versus the implementation side, which is more about how to get people to, go and implement that strategy. Gopal calls it the left glove and the right glove. And it happened that each of us had one of those, and combining them would be a good thing to do, is what we thought. And that was the starting genesis of the book.
Thank you. Gopal, any thoughts from you on?
No, I just want to say that about 25 years ago, I got interested and obsessed sequentially with a question which I had never had any academic exposure to. Why do empires rise and fall? And Paul Kennedy's book on the rise and the fall of the great empires was the trigger. And I found certain things, which is not what I'm going to go into now, but inevitably empires that rise rapidly. And empires that decay slowly.
Right.
So you had an asymmetric parabola. And I charted the Ming dynasty, I charted the Mughal dynasty, I charted the Ottoman Empire, and one or two others. I used to teach this in the IIMs in a program. And the question lingered with me because one of my professors who taught me in physics in IIT said, why can't you design a management equivalent of a booster rocket so that it prevents the decline? And I said, that's like making people live very long, 150 years. It doesn't make, but there may be an idea there. Are there little booster rockets? So how do you diminish the decline? And that's how I got interested in the subject of people who rise very fast, are living in the future, aggressively, actively devising strategies to rise fast. At a certain stage, maybe it's intergenerational, maybe it's intellectual, maybe it's a rise of the intellect over the heart. They feel complacent and comfortable, and then they start to sort of become inward looking and not embrace the future.
Hmm.
So embracing the future, not only in terms of intellectual content, but also in terms of your attitude of mind
Hmm.
and curiosity, seem to be a very key pivot. And Rishi has already narrated how I had one glove and he had the other glove. And
Yes.
I must say, I would add that I've seen many books on transformation in the market, but so far I have not come across one which brought both of these together, cheek by jowl.
Hmm.
There are strategy gurus, there are OB gurus.
Hmm.
And we said, why don't we not become gurus, but at least try to put our experiences together.
Fascinating. And given the vast experiences both of you have in so many different organizations, this is a great start to our conversation. So my next question, which I'm going to ask both of you to address, and then I'll keep asking one of you to answer the next questions, is how do you define business transformation in the context of your book? And maybe, Rishi, you can respond to this best.
Yeah, I think, the concept of transformation is all over in many, many aspects of our lives. So there is some confusion about what is transformation in a business context.
Right.
And for me, and for Gopal, I think as we work together, it's just one simple thing. Transformation in business is when you do something, whether it's a product or a service that you offer to customers, and that in a significant way changes their life. Unless it comes to that level, it is not really transformation. And let me give you a couple of examples to sort of understand this in simple terms. If you look at the 70s, late 70s, a project I was working on, we designed from scratch something called Fair and Lovely. And that was a period when the Indian economy was sort of having a first resurgence in many ways. And women were coming out to work. They had got educated, they were coming out to work. And for those days, for those times, what we did made such an impact on the women in this country. Today, we might feel that it's not quite, thing to do, talk about fairness of your skin and so on. But those days, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever, it transformed people's lives. And I think that's the way to sort of think about it. If you take today's present, if you take even a small business, which starts as a very small business, like home delivery of food, Swiggy or DoorDash or one of these, for me, that is a transformational strategy, because that is something that is doing which changes your past behavior to something you embrace in the future as a behavior. And when you achieve that, you achieve transformation in business.
Well said. Gopal, your thoughts?
I just do it metaphorically. I have much the same to say as what, but I'll move it away from the business context, just in case you have a few listeners of this program who are not deep into business. What is the difference between a family raising a child and delivering a mature adult citizen in the service of people? That's the difference between change management and transformation. One has a short time horizon, one has a long time horizon. One takes incremental little changes and moves the object forward. The other thinks of something that's fundamental and takes years to show results. One is situational and maybe single functional. The other one is multifunctional and across a broad range. One takes 2, 3, 4 years to show results. And in a world which is impatient for results, it is quite often one is mistaken for the other. The other one may take 10 years to deliver results. So I think they have different time spans. And when your son is grown up and graduating from Harvard or Princeton or whatever, the feeling that you get is very different from having changed his nappy for the last 3 nights. And that's the difference I would like to emphasize.
Well said. What a great example. Thank you. So, Rishi, Can you talk a little bit about how can one manage the tension between preserving core values and embracing new ideas? And I remember in my days in ITC, when it was beginning to transition, this was a big debate that used to happen in ITC as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant question and which business people struggle with all the time. That what do we really stand for? And there are two dimensions, I think, in which a business has to think about and work. The first one, in many ways, because it is outside looking, it is looking at what we have to achieve, how do you deliver to customers, is a expression of what do I want to be. And it is like the baby Gopal mentioned, who is going to be an adult in 18 years. What does he want to be as he's growing up and as he's facing? There are numerous times when you think about it. When you go to school, you don't think about it. But as you are leaving school, get to high school, you start thinking about it. And progressively, a business has to say for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what am I going to be?
Right.
What do I want to be? That's the external interface that the business has to think through. The internal interface is that how am I going to achieve this ambition, and what are my value systems and culture that I have inherited that I can sensibly connect and move into this new stream that I'm going to expand to or realize my ambitions. If the two are in conflict, you are surefire way going for something which will fail.
Well said.
And I think in our book too, we have delved on this in the sense that the importance of your value systems, your culture. If I've got to do something, if I'm an ethical business and I want to do something that is sort of shading that, it is not going to work and you will not be able to sell it to your people and so on, no matter how attractive the so-called ambition might be. Well, so the link between the two is absolutely vital, and we got to think it through both ways.
Well said.
Otherwise, it will fail.
Well said. Thank you. Gopal, how does your book, Embrace the Future, cater to the needs of tomorrow's leaders? And I'm sure both of you have mentored hundreds of leaders.
Actually, it is meant for the tomorrow's leaders.
Yeah.
Although we are past leaders.
Absolutely.
But then, as brain research shows, we all acquire a bit of wisdom as we grow old. And the only wealth, quote unquote, that we have to impart is not $1 billion in the bank, but $1 billion in the head.
Correct.
And the purpose of our writing this book was to download a bit of the billion in the head, which, by the way, doesn't diminish our existing billions, which is going to burn in some crematorium in due course.
Absolutely.
We wrote this for the future leader because the future leader is living as we were 50 years ago, living in our own little world when our seniors at that time were coming from somewhere else. And you have to learn to speak the language of the young people rather than tell them, in my days, I did this, in your days, we did this. So the reference to what Rishi and I did does exist in the book because it has to grow out of the seed of experience. But it is not the dominant trunk in the tree that we have pointed out. In the second part of the book, particularly, Rishi has talked about digital businesses redesigning how to make a building construction business and so on and so forth, which will appeal to younger people. The important point we wish to emphasize, which is where the tomorrow leader comes in, is because when we were young, we were not interested in what our bosses had done in the 20s or 30s. So why the hell should people who are going to be the leaders in 2030 or 40 be interested in what we did in the 70s or 80s? But there is a core which is beautifully and emotionally captured in that film, Diva. You remember Shashi Kapoor and Amitabh Bachchan lost brothers who meet after some time. Amitabh Bachchan become rich, and Shashi Kapoor is looking after the mother. And he says, "मेरे पास घर है, बंगला है, गाड़ी है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है?" And Shashi Kapoor says, "मेरे पास माँ है." You know, that is what values means. How do you nurture one where you get the ghar and the bangla and everything, but also keep ma?
Very well said.
And that is the context in which we have. There are some things that don't change. So back in 1880, William Hesketh Lever said, "My mission is to," he used words like mission. Today they all have different meanings. He said, "I want to clean the teeming millions around the world." And the population of the world at that time was probably 3 billion or 2 billion or whatever it was. And he said there's lots of people to clean. That can still be said for Unilever.
Yeah.
Aakir karte kya ho? Whether you're cleaning them, beautifying them, making them more attractive, you're giving them a sense of hygiene, it's cleaning. Likewise, Jamshedji Tata said, we are not part of society. We are there because of society.
Correct.
We are the society. And he set up a 3-level question to ask. Is it good for the country? Is it good for the people? Is it good for Tatas? Whereas today's tendency in young people is to invert it. Is it good for me? Valuation. Is it good for other people? And if somebody else gets rich, I don't mind.
Yeah.
So you have to find a subtle way not to get carried away with. You'll find very little reference in our book to technology. People say, what about artificial? In this morning, a friend of mine said he should have written one chapter on artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I finished my sports activity, came into the changing room. Another friend who attended our last launch conference said he should have written one on environment and sustainability. I said, we would have written a 1,000-page book, we know who would be reading.
Yes, absolutely.
But these are the things that have always been changing. And therefore, we talked about how you respond to it rather than what the changes.
Well said. Well said. Rishi, how can leaders ensure that transformation is a continuous endeavor rather than a crisis response?
Yeah, I don't think there are better questions than what you have just asked. That the concept of a continuum, that it is today, the yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the part of a continuum. And when we talk about tomorrow, as we were talking in the value systems and cultures question that you asked, if people don't think of it as a continuum, then they are going to fail again. And if you look at political leaders, and if you look at the greatest business leader, the greatest political leader, so let me try and think of 2 or 3 examples. If you look at Mahatma Gandhi, Roosevelt, and Mandela, for example, 3 great leaders. And you see Jamshedji Tata, you see Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. They are leaders of the past and the present, but they share some very common traits. And they have good knowledge of history, all of them. They have a very good sense of the culture within which they are operating. They have appreciation of the present, not only an appreciation, but a very strong grasp of the present. And they have ambition for the future. Leaders, businesses who want to be great have to take this whole continuum into their mindset, the way they think. Because only when you are doing this, you are able to not create a crisis in the future, in the present. The present is the most important thing that a businessman should deal with. Gopal and I don't want to give an impression that future is more important than the present.
Correct.
Present is always the most important, because if you cannot manage the present, then where is the future? There is no future.
Correct.
So maximum time, maximum effort must go behind the present. But in the present context, a lot of managers, a lot of leaders, a lot of CEOs, are sitting in an aircraft which is flying, and they think there is stability, things are good, you can sip a cup of coffee while you are sitting there, while you are hurtling at 1,000 kilometers an hour to a new destination, new people, new cultures, and so on and so forth. And once you get out of that sense of saying, I also got to deal with the future. Otherwise, the present of some future leader is going to be terrible, right? Because all of us have limited time span. So within that, the past and the present and the future have to be linked. The past is about experience, and the future is about intuition, but not just intuition, but organized intuition.
Imagination.
And that is something that we are even talking in our book as a philosophy.
Great response. Thank you. Gopal, do you have any thoughts on that point? You were saying something?
No, I think Rishi has said it all.
Okay.
The past is about your experience. The future is about imagination. The present is about survival.
Well said. But my question to you now, Gopal, is that how does your book approach the concept of success and failure in leadership decisions?
I don't think our book is focused in that direction, except tangentially, because we are implying that if you have a purpose, I'm using jargon now, but if you have a niyat, to use an Urdu word, if you have a niyat, which is where do I want to go, and you keep refreshing that, not every year, but every 10 years, 15 years, periodically, at least apply your mind to come to the conclusion it doesn't require refreshing.
Okay.
Then the second thing to sort out is your niti. If your niyat is clear, then your niti, how will you conduct yourself?
Right.
And then you decide your niyam. And we have referred to this in the book, that the three ends must be in alignment. Having a terrific niyat without the accompanying niti and niyam is not very helpful. And putting it another way, I'm coming in from the people side, that whatever it is intellectually you have produced, you have to run your company with ibadat, insaniyat, and inayat. If you don't have these three, then you're not going to create the sauce in which to cook the dish. Although you have finest vegetables and meat around you, it's not going to get cooked. So I consider the three eyes as a sauce in which the three ends have to be cooked.
Well said.
Using the chef metaphor just to be brief about it.
Well said. So, Rishi, next questions for you. What advice do you have for leaders who are dealing with resistance to change within their teams?
Yeah, I think this is, again, a philosophy that we have articulated in the book. The great importance of combining heart and mind in the way you run your business, in the way you are trying to expand or transform your business. Because people will resist things that are stupid. People also resist things that are intelligent, but you are in a better place when you are wanting to do things that are intelligent. So the part where the mind works, where you are able to articulate your purpose and your, what we call in the book, a targeted future, the next 5 years or so, 3 to 5 years, if that is made up of good logic, good sense, good consumer insight, good technology support, a method of how it can be achieved in a sensible, logical way. Sometimes leaders think that our people are not intelligent enough to be able to grasp some of these things. And I think that's a fallacy. Every time in our own lives, in our own careers, when we have come with a half-baked idea or a quarter-baked idea, there's a good chance of great resistance. But when we came out with a powerful idea, there was not that there was no resistance, but there was high levels of starting acceptance. And the other part then is, how do you take that approach to your people? Do you take it in a very intellectual way? Do you take it in a very human way? Do you take it in a way that threatens their future, or the way it enhances their own future? Because business success and future has to link with the current people and their futures and their success. So if you're going to kill them for an idea, it's obviously going to get resistance.
Yeah.
So you got to take this whole thing through and combine the mind and the heart into an end product, which then starts melting the resistance. I think resistance has to be there, because if there's no resistance, it also can mean great degree of disinterest.
Well said.
Of saying that, hey, we don't care what you guys are trying to do, go ahead and do it, type of thing.
Well
So when
said.
they interact, even if it's negative to start with, we always used to take heart of saying, yeah, there is something that we can complete. So just to conclude, it's rarely that people like Gopal and me have taken 100% baked product, the cake, to our people. We have taken a cake in the oven, or maybe even before that, before it's going to go into the oven. And that drops resistance in a very significant way.
Great response. Thank you. Gopal, you have mentored and you continue to mentor a lot of startups. India is the third largest startup nation in the world. My question for you is, how can small businesses and startup entrepreneurs apply the lessons from Embrace the Future?
That's a very interesting and good question, Astosh. You know, startups think that they are a different species.
Correct.
They are just at an earlier phase of life than adults.
Absolutely.
But somehow it's like your son or my daughter or whoever, they think they are a different species, and grandfathers are meant to be.
Yes.
First important to tell startups that every grown-up today was a startup.
Yes.
And as you can see behind me in green cover, I collaborated with my brother to write a book, Wisdom from Startups from Grown-ups. So my small minor contribution was to pull together that every grown-up was a startup, including Tata and ITC and Hindustan Lever and everybody else. And there's a phase of growing. So that's the first message. The second message is not to tell startups, oh, you young punks, listen to me. Just like in a family, if grandfather keeps telling the grandson who's returned from Harvard or MIT, that हमारे time में हम ऐसे करते थे, it doesn't help very much. The father also has to adapt in order to be able to deliver lessons to the youngster. And the third thing is to create that feeling in the youngster, in the startup, that घर में बच्चा पैदा होता है कि उसको सयाना होना है. And he must be, you're not there to fatten your child. At the age of 18, he should not weigh 200 kilos and be the world's toughest man. But at the age of something else, he may be a nicely grown, well-balanced person. We have got, unfortunately, in our country, thanks to the VC industry, I have to blame somebody, so I'm blaming them. Perhaps they are not able to blame. An American money-mindedness, which is human. I'm just calling it American because they are leaders in the field. Quarterly results, quick valuation, and our youngsters have got imbued with it. One must be understanding of it. And if I was 20, 22, I think I'll also be caught up with it. And one of the things that I'm doing while mentoring startups is, मुझे आपके valuation से कोई मतलब नहीं है, मुझे value से मतलब है.
बिल्कुल.
So leave out the last 4 alphabets and let's talk turkey. Then the conversation changes. And I have to say that I'm not saying this in any condescending way. Youngsters are far brighter than the oldsters. It's just that their energy has to be channelized. And through that, I'm hoping that India will stop counting that we are the third biggest with the largest number of unicorns. We have got 120 unicorns, of which 3 make a profit here. Come on, grow up. This is not the kind of startup environment we need in this country.
Correct.
So anyway, that's I'm diverting.
No, but well said, well said. I have time for 2 more questions. I'm going to ask one from each of you. Gopal, let me ask you this question now. What is one timeless lesson in leadership that you would like to highlight for my viewers and listeners from your book?
I think I'm a great evangelist of having the right purpose. And I think purpose is like a compass. Strategy is like a map. To navigate your personal life, your businesses, future, you need a compass and a map. But you don't look at the compass at every petrol pump, but you need to look at the map every petrol pump.
Correct.
And I would like to bring out that the greatest businesses are created by people with a wonderful compass, but who also have a detailed map so that the wrong turning that they took can be corrected. So, in short, I would say, I tell people, I would like the single message is, think a lot about the purpose of your business.
Right.
And the steps of strategy, and carry people with you.
Thank you. And my last question for you, Rishi. What do you and Gopal hope readers will take away from Embrace the Future?
Our hope is that we are able to make sense to a whole generation of leaders, current leaders who have in their middle age in terms of age profile, and have already reached positions in businesses that where they are leading. But the concept really is that leadership is there. When I talked to you last time, we talked a little bit about how leaders are there at every step of your career.
Right.
So if you are a young manager in the field and you have a group of salesmen working for you, for them, you are the ultimate leader. I mean, they don't see the chairman of the company or the CEO or whatever, maybe once in their lifetime or 2-3 times in their lifetime. But the everyday leader, the foreman in the factory, the salesman in the field, they have their immediate bosses who are leaders. And then that actually goes step by step. Our hope is that we are appealing to not just one of these segments or one of these groups, but we are able to appeal to all of them with a certain level of timelessness. So it has to be timeless, it has to also be timely. That it appeals to today, it also appeals to your ambition of what it is going to be in the future. And if we are able to do that, this is the hope. The readers will decide if they are getting this or not getting this. At the end, the customers, the readers matter the most. But if you ask the root question of what were we discussing, what were we thinking, what were we trying to put across, it are some principles like the Niti, the Niyam example, or the history to culture, to intuition, to organized intuition. This every generation of leaders can use wherever they are. And if people pick this up through the book, then we would have achieved our goals.
Well said. And on
Can I
that
add a
note,
little
Gopal, yes, of course, please.
Which is, I'm reminded as Rishi was talking of Harivansh Rai Bachchan.
Yeah.
You know, one of my fortunes or misfortunes in school was Hindi became my first language.
Okay.
And I struggled a lot with it. So I mugged it up and some of it sort of sticks around in my head. He wrote a beautiful poem called Madhushala.
Yeah.
He says, घर से निकलता है पीने वाला, असमंजस में है वो भोला भाला, किस तरह से जाऊं सोच रहा है, लोग कहते यहाँ, लोग कहते वहां, लेकिन मैं कहता हूँ राह पकड़ तू एक चला चल, पा जाएगा मधुशाला.
Fascinating.
This is the quest of every business executive, Madhushala.
Correct.
And we have become an English-speaking, English prose writing Harivansh Rai Bachchan for them. That's my hope.
Well said. Well
They
said.
may not succeed.
Well said. And on that note, Gopal and Rishi, I just want to say been such a privilege speaking to both of you. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your book, Embrace the Future. I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out the book written by both of them, Embrace the Future. Thank you for speaking to me at such length about transformation, about leadership, about future, and how it applies to so many different people who are going to be following all of us in the corporate world, in business, and as entrepreneurs. Thank you again for speaking to me. All the very best for your book.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you, Hrishi. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.